I'm David Goforth.
And I'm Pam Ooten. We're both co-workers at the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Program here in Cabarrus County.
And we've done a lot of different cooking techniques, Pam, but I thought we would add to that cobbler.
You've always wanted to do a cobbler, David, so I'm glad we're finally getting to do a cobbler. Or you're doing a cobbler.
Okay, this is a technique that we use on apples, peaches, blackberries, and cherries. You can use it on all those fruit that we can grow here. Perhaps not very well in the case of the cherries, but I do grow some cherries at times. But today, I'm going to start with some peaches.
That you grew, I bet.
I did everything from planting the tree. So this will be local food.
Okay.
And this is after the season. During the season, you can actually just cut these things up and go ahead and put them into the bowl and do the cobbler like that. It's a lot easier during the season, but you can't do it. The season only lasts for about 6 weeks in case of my peach trees. So what I'll do is I'll put them in the freezer like this. These are in the freezer, and I'm pulling these back out this time of the year after frost, and we'll work with these. Now on peaches, being we're talking about peaches specifically, there's a lot of moisture here when we pull these things back out, and we have to do something about that. There's several different ways a person can do. They can make a mixture of dough that will actually go down and soak up some of this juice and sort of cook it out that way, or you can thicken it up with cornstarch. But I've sort of found another technique that I like, and as you know, some of the dinners we have around here, people like my peach cobblers.
They love your peach cobbler.
Well, I'll give away my techniques today. What I do is I take it from here and I put it into a microwavable bowl, and we will microwave it for a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then I pour off the liquid, which is there's some liquid that you pour off immediately. There's still some liquid in there, and then I'll just microwave it out until it's down to a thicker one like this. Now, being I know the peach variety Contender, that will stay pretty and colorful like this. Some of your peach varieties will turn a little bit darker on this, but this is colorful, and it takes for a pint, you're doing about 10 minutes here, but you'll have to keep a check on it. You don't want to boil it down too dry in the microwave. A little bit of liquid is okay on it. And then within the last minute, I'll add a little bit of butter to it. And of course, it's got a little bit of sugar already from when we froze it, using the techniques you teach for freezing peaches. It's got a little bit of sugar in it, a little bit of butter, and I'll take a little bit of my maple syrup.
Oh, your maple, this is yours too?
This is my maple syrup here. I'm the only maple syrup operation in Cabarrus County, and I don't put enough in there till you taste the maple syrup consciously. You know, you wouldn't be able to pick that flavor out, but it's a little bit in there.
Yeah.
Now, once I've got it to this point here, what I need to do is take it from this bowl and put it into another bowl. And the reason is because you see where it's boiled up here on the side?
Yes, it's dried.
This will turn black in the oven, as you know, and so that's why I'm moving it from that bowl to a bowl here. And I'm trying to be very careful not to splatter it up on the top here. So what I'll do is I'll just pour it into this bowl here, the one that'll actually do the cooking in, the baking in. Careful into the center where it doesn't splatter, and then spread it out. Now, if you were, you can put the crust on the bottom, and sometimes I'll do that, particularly going to a homecoming or something where people don't know that I'm cooking a peach cobbler. I'll leave the peaches on top and the crust on the bottom. Now, if I was doing that, I would use some nonstick spray oils like Pam or something like that. And in this case, though, with the liquid or with the fruit on the bottom, you really don't need the Pam or the nonstick spray on there. Now, that time I've got a fruit, and again, if it's summer, you can just drop your peaches in there. Blueberries, you can drop them in there. Sometimes I mix blueberries and peaches. They're both getting ripe at the same time. So at this point, I want to do the crust. And the crust is, you like recipes all the time, Pam. So what are the recipes?
Women want the recipes, David.
This is easy enough till I've got it memorized. 1 cup sugar, 1 cup flour, and 1 stick of butter. I've actually cut it in half today because we don't need quite that much. So,
for a normal recipe, you'd be using 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of flour. Is that what I heard you say?
Well, if I needed that much dough.
Oh, okay.
I don't quite need that much dough. And what I want to do at this point is take the flour and sugar and mix it together till it's very well mixed right here.
your peach cobblers are well known, David. There's no doubt about that.
Now, we'll take this right here. The butter is at room temperature, which is important. You don't want to take it right out of the freezer and try to do this with it. If you did get to this point and all you had was frozen butter, you could microwave it for about 30 seconds and put it in a dish where it wouldn't spill, because it won't do quite as well. But you don't want to microwave it till it's liquid. If it's liquid, it just doesn't work right. And what I'll do is start mixing this in here.
This is almost the technique of cutting the butter, cutting the fat into the flour and sugar. I would call that cutting.
What it's called?
It's called cutting.
Okay. Well, I am
You're cutting it in.
Cutting it in, all right. And I want to keep working with this, and it does take a while to do this. And actually, I've got some that I did right here. Now, occasionally, you'll get around here, and this won't, you want it to look about like this. This is something that I've done right here. And if you do it much more than that, you get it where it all gums together, and that's not really good. Speaking about gumming together, you cannot use margarine like this. It'll taste like plastic, and I don't know why that is, but it does take butter. You may be able to use some of these other substitutes, but you sure can't use margarine.
Sometimes you just want butter, don't you, for that delicious taste. We're not going to even count the calories in that butter.
Well, the trick, there's two ways you can handle this, ma'am. Number one would be like my grandparents did. They plow behind a mule all day after eating a little bit of this. Which is not really a practical technique for us to use.
No, it's not.
But what we need to do is sort of like the French do, is eat very small portions.
Ah, okay.
Now, this is going to be about the right moisture, but I could take some of this peach juice that I poured off to begin with and add a little bit of that if I wanted to make it more moist. But what you're looking for is to be crumbly like this. You don't want a solid gob. If you've got a gob, I sometimes try to make flour in there so it crumbles up like this right here. Is there a name for that?
Oh, well, you've crumbed it. Or
Crumbed
you crumbled it.
Okay.
Crumbled it up.
All right. And I'll spread this on the top and try to leave a little bit of the peaches showing around like that. You don't need a whole lot of this here, and leave it sort of like that. At this point, I'm ready to stick it in the oven. Normally bake these around 325, 350 degrees, and probably set my timer on about 12 minutes so I can check on it for one this size. If there's a bigger one, sometimes you have to go longer on the ones that I have for like covered dishes at the church and things like that. But I think this is the making of a very good cobbler here. And so I'll stick it in the oven.
All right. We've really been looking forward to David making his cobbler.
There's one I baked earlier.
Ah.
Voila.
It looks absolutely delicious. And I love the way the crust and the butter has kind of melted and spread out a little bit too. So it's covered your peaches now. Oh, it looks so good. It looks really great, David. Okay, so that was, and I'm going to give this back to you.
All right.
That was your world famous cobbler. And there are other ways of making cobbler. And I have to admit, it's not as how shall I say it, unhealthy as I thought it was going to be, but it's still a little bit unhealthy. And David, now I'm going to make a apple crisp, and it's going to be healthy, but it's going to be good, I promise you, okay? We're going to start by, first of all, spraying with some food spray, a 9 by 13 dish or pie pan or casserole dish to cook this the apples in. Next, we've got 4 cups of sliced apples. And David, today I'm using a variety of apples. I've got in there Red Delicious, Macintosh, and Honeycrisp. I love Honeycrisp. And these are all available now, I believe, locally at the farmer's market.
Honeycrisp is sometimes more of a northern variety, but they do sell them at local farmers markets.
They are absolutely delicious. And did you notice also that I left the peeling on? Now, anytime you can leave the peeling on a fruit recipe or really any kind of recipe, it's a good practice for a couple of reasons. One, you're saving time, but two, most importantly, a lot of the nutrients are in that peach, got peach on my brain, and that apple peeling. Now, simply what we're going to do now is you used flour and sugar. Well, we're going to do something very similar. I'm going to make a little crumb mixture using 2 tablespoons of butter. I think you used what, about a half a stick or a half a cup of butter. And then we're going to add 3/4 cup of quick cooking oatmeal. Notice we're making this a little bit healthier. 3/4 cup of quick cooking oatmeal. We're only going to add for this whole dessert, 1/4 cup of sugar. It's sounding a little bit healthier, isn't it? And then we're going to add 1/4 cup of whole wheat flour. Now, if you happen not to have whole wheat flour, that's okay. You can use all-purpose flour, but it's a great idea to use whole wheat flour whenever we can. It gives us a little bit more nutrition. So we're just going to add the whole wheat flour into our container. And now we're going to add the 2 teaspoons cinnamon. Now, David, I generally am a really great measurer, try to be real accurate, but I don't think you can get too much cinnamon in this. But I did add about 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then we're going to add just about a teaspoon of lemon juice. So, just as you mixed your cobbler crust, I am also mixing this crust. It's going to look a little bit different than your crust did. And you can see the oatmeal in there and the brown sugar, or excuse me, not the brown sugar, but the oatmeal and the cinnamon getting mixed up. This recipe has really become a favorite at our Cook Smart, Eat Smart classes that we teach. It's so easy and it's so healthy. Now that we've got the crust mixed up, all we're going to do is sprinkle the crust on top of the apples. Now, today I've used apples, but I do want to mention that you could also add some raisins to these apples. You could add some dried cranberries. That'd be really pretty in the fall. You could add some currants. You could add some, perhaps, pears. But definitely I always think of apples going so well with raisins, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
And can you smell the cinnamon? You can smell the cinnamon. All righty, great. Now, I might need to just kind of spread that out a little bit more, get it more evenly covered. Wasn't this easy? Gosh, this was easy.
You mentioned the white sugar and brown sugar. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll use brown sugar just for a little bit different taste. The nutritional profile is about the same, mm-hmm. and not a whole lot of difference, and so it will substitute for that particular recipe fairly well. I have put it into this cobbler a few times.
Oh, have you brown sugar?
Not fully. You have to use some white sugar, but maybe half.
And you know, if we were really trying to cut the fat, we could use a sugar substitute. This only calls for 1/4 cup of sugar, but perhaps we could use 1/8 cup of regular sugar and then 1/8 cup of a sugar substitute to further cut the calories, especially if you were diabetic. And this is a recipe that I think would be really good for a diabetic. Now we're just going to bake this in a 375-degree oven for about 45 to 50 minutes. I checked on mine at 40 minutes and found that the apples were tender and really ready to come out. So, David, is this not a healthy apple crisp? And I'm going to reach right below and bring out a finished apple crisp that was made a couple hours ago. And I have to admit, when you're at home, a small scoop of low-fat frozen vanilla yogurt does taste good on this. But this is a healthy dish, and it sure doesn't have the butter and sugar that some of the other desserts and cobblers that we...
Still wouldn't want to eat the whole thing now, would you?
That's a really good point. This should serve about 6 people, or maybe even fewer more than that, but about a little square. But that's a good point. Everything in moderation, or you know, those portion sizes are really important. Well, how many would this serve your peach cobbler?
Probably about 16 if you counted the calories. 16
is how many it should serve. Okay, but how many does it probably really serve? About 4 or
so? Well, it serves me, but I go at it more than one time.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you added that. Well, David, it sure has been fun to learn how to make a traditional cobbler using peaches, and you said other fruits that could be used were?
Blueberries and blackberries. Normally blackberries, I put a little bit more flour with them, but the other one is apples. We can put this into apples also. And
we've kind of come back with a healthy apple crisp. that certainly we could add raisins to, currants, dried cranberries would be very, very pretty. And the secret to this is we've used the oatmeal as well as the whole wheat flour. But isn't it fun to eat locally?
Especially when it's dessert.
Especially when it's dessert. I'm saying eat dessert first, life is short. Eat dessert first, life is short. But also eat local and eat smart.